Hi there, this is Alana. You're listening to the Successful Writer Podcast. Today I am going to be chatting with you about how to know if you should start a new pen name, but really this can be extrapolated to a lot of different things. How do you know if you should start a new series? How do you know if you should say yes to this author who wants to collaborate with you? Any new decision that you need to make in your writing career, you can kind of take through these series of questions. I'm going to frame it in terms of should you start a new pen name, but even if you have no interest ever in starting a new pen name, these are questions that you can go through and ask yourself when new opportunities arise and you're not really sure which way to go. So I think one of the most important questions to ask is this going to take you closer to your goals? So picture where you want to be in 3 to 5 years, and then is saying yes to this pen name or to this opportunity going to get you closer to your goals? And I encourage you to think about your goals in a broad, holistic sense, not just in a dollar amount. Like, I want to be making $80,000 a year. That's great, but that's not the only thing we're talking about here. There's lots of ways to make $80,000 a year. Not all of them have to do with starting a new pen name. So a better question would be, okay, I want to be making this much money. Will starting a new pen name help me get there? I want to have this sense of satisfaction, right? Can you picture, your wall of books behind you? And do you picture multiple pen names and multiple series, that kind of thing? Does this fit in with your vision of the future that you want? And some of that does have to do with how simple or complicated you want things to get. Adding a new pen name is more than just writing books in a new genre. It's starting to market. It's starting over. Not totally from scratch because you have all the experience, but in terms of audience and things like that, it's starting over. So that's another question to ask yourself is, what is the cost of saying yes to this? Is it going to cost things like a lot of creative energy? Is it going to cost a lot to maintain, right? Think about an entire new website, an entire new newsletter list, and not only the financial expenses involved with maintaining those, but just the mental energy and the time it takes to keep track of multiple platforms and things like that. So that's another question. Is it worth all of the cost? And we're talking about financial cost, time cost, as well as just the energy and the mental energy cost of maintaining two separate pen names. And then when you ask yourself, what's it going to cost me? You also need to ask yourself, what am I going to gain from this? And so we need to think about what we're getting out of it, not just in terms of money, like we talked about. That's for sure part of it. But also, are you going to get other things besides just money, right? Most of us can look at a genre that sells better than the one we're currently writing in. That doesn't mean we're all going to jump ship and write in that genre. Right? So you need to ask yourself, am I also going to feel creatively fulfilled doing this? Is this going to be something that builds up my energy, or is this just going to be a huge energetic drain? Those are things to ask yourself in addition to just the financial component. Sometimes you can do something that doesn't make much sense financially, but still has benefits. Great example is last year I wrote 2 books for authors. I had them up. I didn't do a ton in terms of like marketing them. They didn't sell too great. They were messing up my also bought, so I took them down. From a financial standpoint, I wasted a lot of time and money on those 2 books because I paid for edits, I paid for covers, I spent a couple months, getting them written when I could have been writing my fiction, which I know sells better. But I don't regret writing them because the process of writing them was actually a creatively filling process. I felt inspired writing it, and now those books are on my website, so they're still available and still able to help people. And I don't regret that I did it, even though it didn't make me money. I'm sure I lost money in terms of, the time and expense that went into getting those out. So don't feel like you have to only look at the dollars and cents. Just make sure though that whatever you're putting out, whether that's time or money or energy, that you're getting that back in terms of time or money or energy. And even the creative energy, the sense of fulfillment, those are all things that count as kind of net gains. So that even if you've got a genre that you have always wanted to dive into, it feels so inspiring and energizing to think about, and you go ahead and you do it and you end up losing money, Sometimes that's still okay. You took a creative risk. You followed a creative whim. This commercial success isn't guaranteed to follow from there. And so that's another question to ask yourself. First of all, picture, what if this project that you're excited about diving into, what if it doesn't make as much money as you're hoping, right? What if you just break even? Or what if you even lose a little bit of money? Is it still going to be worth it by the other things that you gain out of it in terms of the creative fulfillment or the satisfaction or the challenge, right? And sometimes it's still going to make sense to dive into that and know that even if you don't make your money back, you still took a creative chance and had a lot of fun doing it. This is actually one reason why I'm pretty passionate about encouraging authors to make the most out of their backlists and to be marketing the books, even books you've written 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Have those keep selling and be doing your ads for those, things like that, because that way you are buying yourself more creative freedom to try some of these experimental things. Not all of them are going to work, but if you've got a decent sized backlist and you've been investing in the marketing, it's okay if every single book that you write isn't an overnight success. And sometimes it's worth it just to have had that creative output and to follow that creative spark. So seeing as how success is never guaranteed, ask yourself, if I start this new pen name, if I commit to this project and I don't make my money back, let's say you just break even, okay? Will you be disappointed? Will you regret that you did it? Or will you be thrilled that you had the chance to try something new? And that can really help guide where you're going to go. This next one's more of an intuitive, I call it kind of the gut check, right? Like, are you feeling so drawn toward this project that it's constantly going to be nagging at you until you say yes to it? Sometimes ideas grab a hold of us and really like they're not going to let us go. One thing I definitely would encourage you to do though, if you're at that point where, you know, the idea has gotten a hold of you, it's not letting you go. I think a great question to ask yourself first is, can I make this idea work with the pen name that I've already built for myself? I think that's a really smart question to ask yourself first. So for example, I have done mostly straight up suspense novels. And then I really love the psychological thriller genre. I decided I really wanted to write in a psychological thriller kind of way. I could have started totally over from scratch and started a brand new pen name, but to me, it wasn't worth all of the energy output that we talked about. So what I ended up doing is I found a way to work the things that I loved about that genre into the books that I already am writing and am already known for. All right, so I've got a couple standalones that are more thriller in tone. They have a lot of the same kind of hallmarks of the psychological thrillers, but they still fit into my branding as a Christian suspense novelist, right? So I think that's a really smart question to ask yourself. If you're just feeling drawn toward writing something different than what you've written before, ask yourself, is there a way that I can get this same degree of creative fulfillment while working within the confines of what I've already got? And sometimes the answer is going to be yes. And then if you don't want to, you don't have to start totally over with a new pen name. Sometimes the answer is going to be no. And that's where you need to ask yourself some of these other questions. But don't forget that just gut check. And I think a really great way to frame the question to yourself is, how disappointed will I be if this does not work out? All right. And usually your knee-jerk reaction to that question is going to tell you how strongly you're holding on to it. And when I say it doesn't work out, I'm not talking about whether it makes you money. I'm talking about, if you don't do this, how disappointed are you? If you tell yourself, if you put on your publisher hat and say, you know what? No, we have too much on our plate. We're not adding another pen name to the list. You're not writing this new thing. How disappointed are you? And that's going to be a helpful way to kind of quantify how drawn you are towards this. Is this just like an itch, or is this something that's so deep within your core that like life is never going to feel fulfilling until you've taken on this project? So real quick recap, the questions that can help influence your decision about starting a new pen name or not. How much energy is it going to take to maintain? I'm talking about time energy, financial energy, creative energy. Are you getting currency back? Are you getting creative fulfillment inspiration, money, right? Are you getting rewarded for doing this? Even if you aren't rewarded, is this still something that you want to pursue? How strongly do you want to pursue it? And can it work in the context of what you're already doing so that you can kind of scratch that creative itch without having to start totally over on something new? And that's another great question to ask yourself. Are you drawn toward the idea of a new pen name just because you like starting new things? And if that's the case, it might be such a strong case of shiny object syndrome that for you, it's less about this specific pen name and more about something new. And so in that case, again, the question is, can you scratch that same itch working with what you've already got? So maybe you don't need a whole new pen name. Maybe you just need a new series or something like that. So those are all of the kind of questions that you can ask yourself. It's fun and exciting to start new things, but it's also a lot of energy and work to maintain. And I hope that this episode has given you some of the guidelines to help trust your creativity, trust your inspiration, and to make the best decision for you at this time in your author career. So thank you for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.